Hello, and welcome to Unfiltered Eat Better, Think Better series. This is where we get real about our emotions, mindset, connection to food, and healing, and what it really takes to break free and feel good in your body and life again. I'm your host, Jaini Shah, and in this series, I sit down with everyday people who face challenges with their health, body, their mind, their confidence, or long held beliefs that have held them back, and found powerful ways to rise and grow through it all. These are real stories, no filters, no fluff, just raw conversations about what they struggled with, what actually helped, and how they created transformation from the inside out. Whether you're on your own journey or just curious on what's possible, you're in the right place. So here's to eating better, thinking better, and living a phenomenal life. Let's go. I want to welcome our guest today, Alina. Alina used to be a teacher. Well, not actually just a teacher, but actually a school principal. And one thing we're really going to talk about today is one, the burnout that she experienced, but two, also a long held belief, which I think is quite relevant because I've heard this from a lot of teachers as well about exhaustion in that field. And every teacher that I speak to is always like, oh, I'm exhausted at the end of the day. And Alina just shared something really interesting with me, which was there was this belief that if you're not exhausted at the end of the day and you're a teacher, then you're not doing a good job. And so it's almost like that depletion was normalized. And that's something we're also going to explore today. We're going to talk through Alina's healing journey, what she noticed was going on, and what really supported and helped her. And what she's discovered is her new belief system, her new purpose, and the impact that she wants to make, all that came out of this experience that she went through. So, Alina, welcome and thank you so much for being here. Let's kick it off. I'd love for you to just start, right at the beginning, when you started to notice something was going to be off.
Thank you so much, Janie, for having me. It's great to be here. And yes, just like everybody's life, there could be a whole book written about mine. But I really want to share just highlight a story that completely transformed who I am today and what I do professionally. And I'm an immigrant from Armenia. I've lived in California for almost 30 years. And moving a country, you really need to find your space and almost rebuild a new career. And I was so like laser focused on making that happen in a very linear pathway. I went into education. I'm super passionate about children, became a teacher, then not to mention that all the learning that was involved, right? All the degrees and credentials that I needed to get. And I finally got the job as a teacher, which I absolutely loved. But like you mentioned, there was this one thing that was super difficult the first year, and I thought I was going to quit every day the first year, but I stuck out and it did get a little better. In fact, I got better at it. The job did not get any easier. I was exhausted every single day at the end of, my day, about 3 o'clock, I was just depleted. But that was the norm, or so I thought, because those were the messages that I've been receiving from my supervisors, principals, and I've seen my colleagues going through the exact same thing. So depletion and exhaustion were normalized. And as a giver by nature, I'm an empath and somebody who is in a helping profession. This is what I see, like you said, among teachers, it's quite prevalent, as well as other helping professions, nurses, doctors, and so on. This is just normal. We see it as part of our, professional life, being depleted and exhausted. And so, with that mindset and a strong belief that I can source within continuously and nothing will ever happen to me, this is just how it is. I move forward and I build a career in education all the way to a school principal until a day came that I had no resources left for myself. And I see that coming, but I refused to accept it and continued telling myself, I'm strong enough. I will figure this out. I will make this work. And as a school principal, when you run a large organization, and I had at the time over 700 students, that means you work with all those families, with all the services that all those children receive. I had a special education program at my site, many other focus programs. So you really are spread very thin. And What I've started noticing is that it was getting more and more difficult for me to get my body out of the bed in the morning and just show up to work, leave alone managing all those different moving parts throughout the day. I was sleeping 16 hours a day and I was just nothing, work and sleep. And I was still exhausted when I woke up in the morning. And I still ignored those messages until I literally started fainting. My body was looking for ways to get the message across. And the first time I fainted, I thought, there was something, it was just the flu. And then the second time happened within 1 week. And when the third time happened, I was already in an emergency room getting steroid shots, anti-inflammatory things. And the thing is that the medical system could not find anything wrong with me. They would just check all of my body organs and they would say, you're perfectly healthy. And I would go home. A few days later, I would faint again. High inflammation, hives all over my body, sometimes bruises, and yet all my medical tests were clear. And at that point, you really get um, diagnosed with all these things like fibromyalgia and other things that really mean we don't know what's going on with you, right? But this is the burden that the body has been carrying for way too long without any relief, right? So I was just giving all I had and hardly receiving anything back to the point that I was nothing left to give. So that really put me in a very awkward position being a leader of an organization. I was not able to perform my duties and
Yeah.
it came to a point that I've exhausted all of my sick leave. And because the medical system could not understand what was going on with me, there was no opportunity for me to get on some sort of disability and to continue keeping the job while being paid something until I figured things out. So I was literally told to show up to work the next day, and I was not able to do that.
How did it feel in that whole, and maybe you can explain what was the timeline between the three faints? Like, is this across weeks or months? And also how did it feel to be experiencing this in your body where you were like, wow, like something is wrong, and yet hearing from someone else on the outside who's, checking you that actually we can't find anything.
Mhm. Very confusing. I have to say that was probably one of the most difficult periods in my life. And this was over a period of a few months. I started noticing the first signs around January, and it was about end of March that I took a medical leave just to figure things out because prior to that, like in the month of March, it was over the period of 2 to 3 weeks that I would faint several times a week.
Oh,
And
wow.
that means that I had to, luckily I was home all of those times, but then the fear really kicked in. What if this happens when I'm at work? What if this happens when, I'm walking somewhere or I'm driving, even worse, right? And
Mhm.
so I became fearful just leaving the house quite naturally. And just being in the medical office at the hospital, and the doctor is telling me that we can no longer give you the shots, the steroids and things. You're already at the highest dose and you just received it, but it wasn't helping. So I really needed, so the medical system was not helping. My employers were not helping. And I felt it was really a difficult moment in the sense that who do I ask for help for? It seemed like help was not available. And I think that was the last push that I just need to go inward and really start listening to my body because it's been telling me all along that these things are not working for you. This schedule, this environment, the load that you carry, it's just not manageable humanly because I also had family, two children, and the house and the pet, and I'm always in some sort of schooling. And it was beyond already my capacity to handle all of that, having done that continuously practically all my life. And
Right.
I never had those examples of self-care, growing up. Like I've seen my mother do the same, my grandmother do the same, and even men around me do the same. So that for me was normal
Mhm.
until I really had to stop and check in with myself and say, this can't possibly be normal. and really start finding the answers, not in the traditional places where we would normally look for, but in
Mhm.
some other places and starting within. And because I couldn't get the messages across to my employer that I just need time to figure things out and to heal, when I was given almost the ultimatum, you show up to work tomorrow morning, I literally wrote an email in like at midnight. I consulted with my family, my children, and I said, I don't know where the income is going to come from. And they're like, it's okay. We'll figure it out. Your well-being comes first. And I literally wrote an email at midnight saying that I will not be coming to work in the morning, not tomorrow and not ever. And as a leader of an organization, that was a very, very difficult step to take. But finally, I think I got the wake up call. I had to honor my body. And
Yeah.
from that point on, I had to
Just to
work.
pause you there. What was the wake up call? Because you fainted several times in a couple of weeks, but what was the real wake up call, the moment, if there was one, that made you say, okay, now I really have to turn inwards?
Mhm.
Was
The
there?
wake up call was that very moment that I had to resign. I have worked so hard to be where I was. And it was just the strong, like the inner voice. It wasn't even, we have this inkling, this intuition, which is fairly strong for me, but I've learned to suppress it and totally detach. And I almost lost that connection with myself because for so long I had to survive and I had all those societal messages and I was all career driven. That was that moment, like everything that you've worked for has led you here. Is it
Mhm.
truly yours? Right? So that was the moment. Like, are you really on the right path? Or have you gotten here in the right way for you? Have you considered who you are, your own processes, right? Being an empath, and this all of this realization came later. It wasn't in that moment, but the wake up call was like, I've worked so hard for all of this, and I have to let it go overnight because my inner voice was just screaming at me. It was not an option of, no, maybe you can figure this out, staying. No, I had to make that decision and I had to make a decision that very night. Am I staying or am I leaving? And I could not stay. My body was not in a shape to stay even a day.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
so
It reminds me of, have you
that
heard
was the
of
moment.
that was the moment that you had to just give up. I guess in a way maybe the ultimatum from the school pushed you over the edge and you were like, you know what? I cannot get up. But have you heard of Dr. Gabor Mate?
Of
His
course,
work,
I'm well
right?
familiar with his work when the body says no.
Exactly. That's what I was going to
Yes.
say, is that this was literally, you mentioned that your body was now trying to find a way to communicate to you. Listen, I'm telling you to slow down, to stop, to listen to me. And that book, for anyone listening or watching, it's phenomenal. When we're experiencing something in our body that sometimes other people cannot diagnose, or even very common things that are medically diagnosed, but are not improving even though you're doing the treatments. Sometimes there's something else that's going on there, and that your body is trying to help you understand the message for it. Because your body has to shut down for you to finally be like, okay, I'm going to turn inwards and listen and understand what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. And I discovered that book after this incident, of course, when I started searching for answers, because I realized it's not in the medical system, right? It's not in the structure that I work for. It wasn't even in my family or circle of friends. I had to look it elsewhere. And that's when I turned into, as we call, alternative medicine, which is for
Right?
me, that's the true medicine, right? To homeopathy and manual therapy, and you just name it. Like I was searching for answers everywhere. And that's where my healing journey really began, is going inward and finally listening to the body, to the wisdom of the body that has always been there. And I just completely ignored and shut down. And so that's when I discovered Gabor Mate. I read pretty much all of his books, and I've done several conferences with him. I absolutely love his work. And I realized that was my body's way of saying, no, like this is not the way to do it. And I finally, I mean, towards the end, ultimately, I've come to discover this is not even your path. Just being in a traditional structure, in an academic setting, as much as I love, is not really my path. Um, because the more I discovered who I am and I've connected with myself and I've healed what I needed to heal. And this journey is never ending. We're never fully healed, but um it's the drive that is in me to really become the best version of myself, and that's what I have ultimately started teaching to others. I still work with youth. I coach teenagers, young adults, and their parents, hoping to prevent what I've gone through for them, because I see how the system can easily, squeeze the juices out of you, to the last drop, which is what happened to me through the messages that we receive, since childhood, and through following the linear and established path that is well acknowledged, or we see it as just being respectable, or as a privilege. And so we push our kids into the places that are not necessarily theirs. And so that's what I try now to give through wholeness education, through consulting in schools and school districts, speaking different events, as well as just working one-on-one with youth and their parents. And all of that has come out of my journey, that I really needed to first discover it for myself, figure it out for myself. And I've learned multiple modalities. Now I'm trained in so many different things: integrative somatic therapy, I don't know, Reiki, neurolinguistic programming. So things that I've tried,
Wow.
then
Yeah.
something that worked for me, then I've become actually trained and certified in it. So what I offer through wholeness education, it's a very holistic model. Would we integrate everything? It's the body and the mind and the emotions, and the energy. I worked on every single level,
Wow.
but I
Amazing.
needed to find that out for myself, right?
Yeah.
And most of it was about understanding how the energy works. And because depletion really starts there. And as empaths, sensitive people, we have very porous energy field that can easily be penetrated. And
Yeah.
so that's what literally, that's where my journey of healing had to start, to really understand how to manage my own energy, which I was absolutely clueless about.
Yeah, and that's what I was curious about. As a person who was clueless about this whole energy aspect and all these different ways that we can heal ourselves, where did you start finding answers, and how did it feel to kind of go out there and venture into these different things?
That's a great question, Janie. Yes, it's really difficult because when you don't even think that exists, right? Or even if something your inner voice says that there's must be something else, but your mind, especially for somebody who has all those degrees and very well trained and solidified in the kind of a 3D model of reality, it was really hard to start opening those doors for myself. And it all started with an encounter, which is probably a story for another podcast episode. But literally, I was totally devastated and I thought I was dying. At least that's how it felt inside, that my internal organs were starting to shut down, because I had all kinds of symptoms, despite the fact that the medical system could not diagnose anything. I had indigestion. I would not digest anything. I had heart palpitations all night. I could not sleep. I had an extreme brain fog. Just all the symptoms were there. And I needed to find solutions. So I show up at this homeopathic clinic, and I've known the doctor for a number of years. He was a family friend. And
Yeah.
in a total desperation, I was like, please, can you tell me what's going on, and any solution that you can offer? He checked and he said, I think it's your spine. But let me have you checked. I have a chiropractor in the office, which for 20 years he'd never had one, but that day he did, right?
Wow.
So when things are taken, like some doors close, others open totally unexpectedly. And this guy just literally, he just went with his, like, big finger down my spine and says, okay, I got it. We're going to start tomorrow for a month, every single day. I'll give you treatments. You're going to be fine. We caught you on time. And I was in total shock, as you can imagine. And my treatment started. And as I was showing up, he was doing manual therapy. And I did not realize at the time he was doing energy healing as well, which he was not talking about. It was
Yeah.
energy clearing, all other things. And in that process, he was just giving me information, just sharing information about me, about my childhood, about the path that I've taken, about my future, which confused me even more. And then 30 days were up, and this man just disappeared. He disappeared not only from my life, he disappeared from that office, from the clinic and from the city. And now I started really asking even bigger questions. What was this all about? And so, but because of that encounter, first of all, I started feeling better as a result of those daily treatments within that month. And then something has shifted in me energetically, and I started looking for answers in other places. Like after that, he disappeared. I was
Yeah.
left even in more shock and more questions. And I dropped everything and I went to Bali for a few weeks just to immerse myself in that environment with yoga and meditation. And the answers just started showing up. People started showing up, books started showing up, courses started showing up, right? It's almost initiated me onto that path of healing. And because I was so driven and I was so motivated, so committed to figuring things out, this was this unquenchable, just kind of like a thirst, that
Yeah.
it has become my own personal quest of really understanding what was all of this about, because my
Yeah.
life was kind of split into before and after that encounter. And from there, it was just reading several books a month, trying all different practices. Like I said, visiting Bali a few times. I did Panchakarma, which is Ayurvedic cleanse in Bali at One World Ayurveda, which is a beautiful center. Some of your listeners might be interested in it. And so it's been one thing after another. And I finally reconnected to that inner voice. And even the craziest things that came to me that I needed to do, it was completely out of the norm for, a traditional life. I would
Yeah.
just take the chance and do it. Um, and that's the difference between when we move through life just with our pure logic, based on what we think we know of what we've been taught, versus what is my heart telling me, right? What is my intuition telling me, which is, it's really the seat of your soul, your heart, and it's really trying to guide you on your authentic path. And so
Yeah.
then I've learned how to balance this, how to align it, right? And how to move in life in alignment with heart, mind, and soul.
And I think that's just so beautiful, like how you had that chance encounter and it unlocked so much for you. But also this idea of really being able to listen to our intuition. What do you think helped you? Did you always have an inner voice, or was it this situation that brought out your inner voice a lot louder? And what's helped you hear it even more?
Mhm. That is a great question. And now I can say that I've always had it,
Okay.
right? When I did not listen to it, I didn't even know that I had it and how strong and powerful it was. Now, having healed, I went back all the way to my early teenage years where I knew exactly who I was, things that I was interested in. And I was not allowed to pursue any of it, right? I was given the career that I needed to follow. And my undergraduate degree is in microelectronic engineering from Armenia. That was my family's choice. I was almost chosen, at my personal relationships, what needed to happen, right? In a very protective kind of a bubble that we were raised, the choices were made for me. And because despite the fact, whether we agreed or disagreed, we were not even necessarily asked what we wanted. It was just like, no, this is what you're doing, right? Because this is what's acceptable to the family. This is what we honor. This is what is right. And so this is what we do. And so the more you follow, and this is all scientifically, all the research that I've done, all the studies and the work with Gabor Mate and many other big names, the more we actually follow the wrong path for ourselves, the more we disconnect from our inner voice and in our inner guidance. That's just natural, right? Because we don't honor it, and the voice gets, weaker, weaker, weaker until we completely lose touch with it. And that's exactly what has happened. And especially If you are in a more difficult circumstances, I've gone through an economic crush, after in the post-Soviet Armenia, where literally every day was a survival. So you just really focus on just surviving and doing what's right because the elders know not to say anything. There's so much wisdom that lives there. And I've
Mhm.
learned so many wonderful things from my own family and my elders, my lineage, and many others. But there's also this set way of doing things that we accept, and this is what we know is right for our family. So it was that path that I was presented with no alternatives. And so the more you do things that are not truly yours, that don't resonate, and you think this is what life is. I've come to believe everything that I knew of myself, I just made up,
Yeah,
right?
wow.
And so
Yeah.
that was also part of healing, that going back, no, my intuition, my inner voice, my inner guidance is probably the most powerful, the most authentic, and the most important thing in life, because otherwise we get lost. That's exactly what happened to me.
Yeah, it's so true as well. Like so many clients that I work with, it's this aspect of when we're following something that's not truly ours but has been placed upon us, that's when we tend to face the biggest issues and biggest belief systems. And again, it's not to discredit our elders or to say they've done it wrong. They obviously had the most best intentions at heart at
Absolutely.
that time. But at least now we can start to become aware that, oh my gosh, if something is feeling a little bit wrong, maybe this is not what I'm supposed to be doing. And I can find my way, right? It doesn't mean you have to stop working or stop doing anything, but you can still find ways to recognize who you really are, to open up that inner voice to
Mm,
guide you, on your journey. If you
absolutely.
had to pick two, I'm just picking two as a number, but two things that have been the most impactful, most supportive for you in your healing journey, what would those be?
I think the first thing is having a person who sees you and helps you see yourself as you are, right? Sometimes we need that to be reflected to us, because if we cannot see it for ourselves, we need somebody to hold that mirror and say, look, this is who you are within, right? This
Yeah,
is your truth, and just help you reconnect with it. Because when you're as lost as I was, it's hard to really hear that voice or see that reflection in the mirror, your true, authentic, core, your truth in the mirror. And so I couldn't see it. And that's exactly what that doctor has done for me. He helped me see myself, the best version of myself, or who I could be. Have I followed my path up until that moment? And even moving forward now, after healing and recovery, if I truly follow my authentic path, who it could be. And as a coach, I find that's what I do most of the time, is really helping people to see, just kind of reflect back who they are now and who they could be, creating that compelling future for themselves. It's almost giving them that reflection, because that really then creates this authentic interest and drive and motivation, to move in that direction, because people can be so overwhelmed and depressed and not really in the best state to even take any action. And I find that a lot with my clients. So that was probably the most important thing for me, to see how else it could be, who I truly am, and how my life could unfold from this moment on. It really created that compelling future for me, being reflected through his eyes. And the second thing is really the supportive community, which was my family. Even though they did not understand what was going on, they were there for me no matter what. And it was up to me to figure out, but I knew I could rely on them, to pick up pieces that I could not tend to, because I really needed to, uh, first of all, figure out what was going on and then take care of myself, so then I can be the best version of myself for them as well. And that's really another flip side, an aha moment, that I can't keep giving from an empty cup, which is what I've seen all people around me doing. That I really needed to kind of shift the tables, in the sense that my self-care and my well-being becomes now a priority, because when I'm in the best shape, then I can actually do more for my loved ones and for the bigger world. And so it's really the community. But also, if I can add the third thing,
Okay.
it's really all the resources that are out there. Sometimes it can feel very lonely on this journey. And just what you're doing is so powerful and so important. As you show people where there might be some solutions, right? You mentioned Gabor Mate, and there are so many other names, with their wealth of wisdom that people can have access to just kind of curate their own life curriculum, as I call it, right? Because that's what I've done. I've curated my own curriculum, my healing curriculum, and then my life curriculum by, tapping into different resources. And it's all intuitively driven because when you're
Yeah.
ready, the resource will show up.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. And I think it's probably a message we see a lot more these days on how self-care and well-being really does become a priority. Because guess what? If you're not well, like, basically, if we put it this way, who are your children going to benefit from more? A happy, joyful, healthy mom who's present and in tune with herself and in alignment, or a mom who's exhausted, tired, cannot do anything with her kids? Like which
Absolutely.
one? And so if we can reflect and change the perspective that way, then perhaps more people will still be inclined to be, let me take care of myself, so that I can be the best for myself and for everyone else. Yeah.
Absolutely. And again, that's a work with the belief system because a lot of moms that I work with, they say, but I do everything for my children, right? I have to work, I have to do this, I need to do shopping and the laundry and all, and everything is for the kids. But then she's exhausted pretty much all the time. And when you say like, Lolo, let's implement some practices, the typical answer, and you probably guessed it right, is like, I don't have time for it
Yeah.
until they realize, no, I do have 5 minutes for early morning meditation or late evening stretches. Like I can find 5 minutes here and there throughout my day, right? But if your mind is closed and your program that runs like, I don't have time for it, like all I do is just take care of others, then you're not going to be able, to start the journey of
That's
healing
right.
and self-care for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. What did you discover about your purpose as you went through this healing journey?
Mm, that's a great question. The purpose kind of naturally unfolded because when we experience something and we know that we've learned some lessons, that you naturally start sharing it with people, right? You share what worked for you when you see somebody else struggling with a certain scenario. And then through that, it has come to really evolve into something much bigger that I never anticipated, where I actually do trainings for teachers because a lot of them are exhausted and overwhelmed and depleted. And although a part of it is academic, everything that we talked about today is embedded and infused in it, right? So, how your well being, your energetic boundaries, like the boundary setting, becomes really difficult for caring people, as you probably know, and that was one of my biggest challenges. My boundaries were completely just washed and blurry, and so it really started with because I didn't have those energetic boundaries because of who I am by nature and because of the experiences that I've had growing up. And so teaching them all of that, and oftentimes under the umbrella of social emotional learning, which is really a big thing, at least in the United States these days, but giving all those practices and, just curricula for children, but really helping teachers understand that it all starts with you, right? Who you are, how you show up, how well you take care of yourself, how you set your own boundaries, and how full you are, when you enter that classroom, that really sets the tone for everything that's going to happen throughout the day. And then you really bring this because when you show up as a different person, your class will behave completely differently. And they see those changes actually, because it used to be just give me more resources, give me more activities to do with kids, until they realize, no, this is about who I am as a teacher. Because if I am dysregulated, no matter what activities I do, they will be dysregulated, right? Because there's this energy transfer that naturally happens when we come in close proximity, even when we're not in proximity, but especially in close proximity. So if you enter the classroom as a dysregulated, your nervous system is dysregulated, maybe for valid reasons, what's happening in your life, then it's going to be extremely hard for you to have this healthy and well-functioning classroom environment, regardless of the activities that you do. And so the more they've really started thinking about it and making changes in their own life, the activities kind of naturally came. I still provide the curriculum and things like that, but it transforms their life and who they are with their spouse, with their children, in their daily life. Their level of happiness really changes, like how satisfied they are with their own life. Nothing really changes, per se in
Wow.
their external circumstances, but the feeling about themselves and about life completely changes, right? Their perception completely changes. And that's a big shift. And then from there, it started expanding. I've done, sessions in Croatia, and I teach in Armenia. So it's becoming more global now. It's not only in California or US, at really helping people in helping professions, and primarily teachers, because that's my circle,
Yeah.
understand how all of these things work, and then create actual resources and curriculum for them and for students. And then the one-on-one coaching, which I'm probably most passionate about, when you create a transformation in a teenager's or young adult's life where they have this potential, something is burning, but they think that they need to do X, Y, and Z because
Right.
that's what we all do.
Yeah.
It really fills my heart. It
Yeah.
totally transforms,
Wow.
how they relate with people, because they started relating differently with themselves. Their relationships change, their choices change, their actions change, the way they make decisions change, like everything changes in life.
Yeah, and that's the power that I see in all these examples you've just given, is that when we can shift from the inside, when we can shift our energy, when we can be more in alignment and regulated in a sense, everything around us can feel different. It's not like practically anything changed around us. We're in the same classroom with the same people having the same commute, but we experience everything so differently. And I was watching something actually that was talking about this energetic, emotional regulation of parents. And when you are calm and at ease and truly at the core, you have that emotional regulation, you see that knock-on effect on your children as well. And
Absolutely.
so, if you're in a frazzle and everything, your kid's more likely to respond with that sort of stress and anxiety as well, creating this household of like chaos. But when we can change our energy, it can reflect on all the people around us. So yeah, I think that's it's beautiful
Mhm.
to see that, and I love that you've shared that. Did that happen for you as well? That shift happened for you personally as well?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And I realized why I felt this way because, and this is not to point fingers, but I remember my mother when I was growing up. She was pretty much always, dysregulated in the sense that life was difficult. She was a single mother, and they're all valid reasons. But then the internal work, or the awareness, even because everything starts with an awareness, was not there. So naturally, especially for young children, and this is what I teach, based on neuroscience and psychology, everything that I've got trained in and whoever I partner with, when we work together collaboratively, young children, infants, toddlers, they don't have their own regulatory system, right? Their nervous system borrows ours to learn how to regulate, like literally, and establishes its patterns, which will then be the default patterns as we grow up. So
Yeah.
if as children we did not learn regulation, self-regulation through co-regulation with a regulated adult, then it pretty much sets us on this path of disadvantage because we already don't have that embedded, right? Wired within us. And so it really comes at a later point in life, which is what happened to me, to go through these challenges. And then as we figure out, learn, okay, so this is how it all works. In fact, I've been telling the credentialing people, like every teacher needs to have a course in neuroscience, because I think it's just not right that we become teachers without having that understanding, of neurophysiology, and we just fully focused on just relationship building and academics, which is all great, but we really need to understand how to respond to the child and what our own regulatory capacity, the impact that it has on those youngsters, how important that is. And we just don't know as teachers. That's just not part of our preparation. And but I think that needs to be integrated because it is so important. And once the parents start understanding that and making changes in their own life, their relationship with their children changes, even if they're difficult teenagers, right? Difficult. I don't receive that word. I mean, I don't usually use it. As one of my teachers says, Thomas Hubel, which is another amazing teacher, just like Gabor Mate, he works with collective trauma. He says dysfunction is a healthy function of something deeper that we don't yet understand. Right. So there's really no function. There's always a healthy function of something that we don't yet see or understand. And through a lot of my trainings and having now kind of unveiled my own capacity of deep intuition and seeing more into the invisible world, I can now clearly see what that dysfunction really is. It's a healthy function of the circumstances, right, that have shaped the neurophysiology of the child. And so we need to make all those considerations when we work with people. And that's what I try to do. And again, it naturally unfolded, and I'm learning more and more and integrating more in different fields. And I've never been this passionate, as I was just being in the classroom or running a school. It does not come even close to the passion that I have for the work that I'm doing.
Oh, that's beautiful. I absolutely love that. And thank you for sharing this last bit of wisdom. I love that definition around dysfunction. Um, it's amazing. So as we come to a close, Alina, you are doing incredible things, and I cannot wait to see how you can shift and change and transform that part of the education system, because that's going to be super, super powerful. And the beauty is, like you just shared, is that yes, we may start at a disadvantage, but we all have the capacity to be able to change. So really, thank you so much for sharing your story and letting us know that, we can change our belief systems. We can find this bigger, deeper purpose that gives us even more joy and passion. And, we have this little voice inside of us that we can listen to. And as we close, I'd love to ask you the question that I ask all of my guests. And that is, if healing had a voice, what would it say to you right now?
Hmm. Yeah, that's a beautiful question. It's a very, very low and almost silent whisper that it has. It's very quiet voice, but it's probably the most profound and the strongest voice that I've discovered to be in my life. And it's really about being yourself, right? Just follow your inner guidance to fully unleash your potential and become the best version of yourself, whether the society around you might accept or approve it right away, because that's where a lot of my clients get stuck. Like, this is now what you're asking me to do. Nobody's doing this around me. Like, how can I even do that? That's so out of norm, right? It's just a really normalizing of being ourselves and just following that authentic path unapologetically, because only then we can, I strongly believe, when we follow our true authentic path, only then we can make our biggest contribution in the world, because the seed of intelligence that is born with us really needs to blossom into the big tree that it can be, in the potential. But most of us don't ever discover that because we're so affected by, the society, the beliefs, the messages that we receive, and the norms, and the expectations. So
Yeah.
just be yourself. It's the happiest life lived.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you so, so much for being here with us.
Thank you. Thank you for
All right.
having me.
No worries. And for those listening or watching, if this conversation resonated with you, helped you, or made you feel seen, please be sure to hit subscribe so that you never miss an episode. And feel free to join our free Facebook community, Eat Better, Think Better. It's where these conversations continue and where you'll find real people walking the same path. And if you're ready to go deeper on your own journey, whether it's healing your relationship with food, shifting your mindset, or breaking free from beliefs that are holding you back, you will find more support, resources, and ways to work with me at www.eatbetterthinkbetter.com. So until next time, here's to eating better, thinking better, and living a phenomenal life. Let's go.